Hey ladies and gentlemen, Stephen here from Redolessence. Welcome back to another video. And in today's Cephalabon contributor video, I have the pleasure of having a personal conversation or chat with Manuel Cross, who is the perfumer behind Rogue Perfumery. Today, he has a new fragrance that just came out, L'Homme M Lacroix. It's an amazing leather green citrusy fragrance. I'm going to ask him a few questions about it on camera. And he was also kind enough to offer a full bottle giveaway. If you would like to hear what you can do to participate, make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin this video and I tell you about the giveaway, I do want to mention that if you are a fan of fragrance-related content, please do consider supporting the channel by subscribing to it. Hit the bell icon so you could be notified whenever I do upload future videos to the channel. And of course, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it or if you took something of value from today's episode. So once again, I have the pleasure of being joined by Manuel Cross. But before we do that, if you would like to enter for your chance to win a bottle, all you have to do is shoot on over to cephalabon.com. It's going to be the first link down below in the description box. After you've read through the article and become a registered reader, all you have to do is leave a comment on the article and you'll be automatically entered to win. So good luck, everybody. I'm rooting for you. Best of luck. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start our conversation with the one and only Manuel Cross. So again, welcome back, everyone. As I've said in the intro, today it is my pleasure and a distinguished honor to be joined by Manuel Cross. And of course, we have a new fragrance coming out just today, as a matter of fact, today on Thursday. So Manny, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. It really means a lot.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, of course. And, you know, throughout the past couple of years, I've definitely accumulated a bunch of your fragrances, many of which I actually have here behind me. So we have Derviche 2. I hope I'm not mispronouncing that. We also have Vetaflor, and that was an amazing floral, green, earthy fragrance. And now we have a new one that's being added to the catalog. And I hope I'm not mispronouncing this one. It's L'Homme M Lacroix.
Yeah, Lacroix. Yeah.
Awesome.
My French is very rusty too.
Yeah, I don't speak French at all, so you got to pardon me in my pronunciations. Tell us a little bit about this fragrance. Like, what inspired you to create this fragrance? Did you have a certain idea in mind of the kind of concept that you were trying to fulfill with this one?
This one's a little personal because it tells a bit of, I guess you can call it my origin story. My ancestors came out of France. They were actually, they were booted out of France. They fled to Ireland, where they subsequently fled because they were engaged in a bunch of smuggling activities. This was back in 1735. They fled Ireland and they came to the New World. And their name was eventually changed to Cross.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was changed to Lacroix when they arrived in Ireland, and then just Cross. So finding out that I had these rogue roots, I figured, well, why not make a fragrance that kind of pays homage to the rogue ancestors? And that's where I decided upon leather as the main note for the fragrance, because if you're going to think of what is a really rogue note, it's got to be leather.
I totally understand what you mean. And initially, when I sprayed it, that was my initial impression. I said, wow, there's something kind of animalic in here, but not barnyard leaning. There's something kind of rough and tumble. And I'm guessing it's on account of maybe a little bit of birch or something smoky that's in there.
There is birch tar. Cassie Absolute and birch tar make up the backbone of my leather cord for this fragrance.
And I would say that that leather component definitely makes it a really robust and rich fragrance for this time of the year. And I know a lot of people personally, they like to accessorize their fragrance with the climate and how cold it is and the season and whatnot. And my initial impression was, wow, this is perfect for this time of the year, because it definitely has that tenacity to it. It's very full bodied.
Yeah, and also in wanting to keep with those times, I mean, in the 1700s, I decided to put a little challenge on myself and make it an all-natural fragrance. As far as I know, there were no aroma chemicals being used in the 1700s. I don't think that came till later on with like Jicky, with coumarin. I guess you can say this one will replace Flora and Fauna as my all-natural fragrance in the line.
You know, and I wouldn't have guessed it, and I mean that in a positive way, because all of your other fragrances smell natural.
Oh, thanks.
So it's kind of hard to imagine, oh, okay, with Vetaflor, for example, like what's the synthetic in here? What's the natural in there? Because when I smell it, the overall picture that it conveys is one of a natural perfume. So I do think that the natural ingredients that are featured in your other fragrances kind of do have that spotlight. So smelling this one, it's like, oh, this is par for the course. Like this smells like another great natural, like amazing fragrance from the brand. I can certainly see myself wearing this very confidently, very comfortably as well. It's quite an exuberant release. I'm also picking up on something green in the background. Is it fair to say, because I know you've used vetiver and you've used oak moss in the past, is there a bit of that in here as well?
Yes, there is vetiver. There is oak moss. I built this on a chypre base, so there is oak moss, labdanum, and bergamot. I mean, the three main players in the chypre are in there. I mostly use those just to uphold that leather accord that I put together.
I just think it's so clever how you were able to, you know, take the history of what happened with your ancestors and really pay homage to that sort of migration by creating this wonderful perfume that it seems very methodical, very well thought out. The incorporation of the natural ingredients and, you know, masculinizing the fragrance by building off of that cheaper base, and incorporating that leather accord, which I think is done very, very nicely. Would you say there are some fresher components in here as well? Like, is there a bit of citrus? Because there does seem to be something that's kind of bright right when it opens up.
Yeah, there is lemon as well.
Oh, there is lemon. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the lemon and bergamot is what you'll be catching in the top notes. But there's also petit grain, but that's a little more bitter, but definitely top notes. Besides the Cassie Absolute mimosa flowers, they aren't really, I guess, what you can call sweet and pretty. When I first smelled Cassie Absolute, the first thing I got out of it was like leather handbags. That's what came to mind. I played with the idea in my head for a couple of years because I knew that it can be built. I thought it can very well be built into a leather fragrance, and here we are.
And speaking of mimosa, I've read online that the smell of mimosa flower can be compared to the smell of like almond flour, flour, as in the baking ingredient. Is it fair to say that there's like a starchy or like a slightly, not powdery per se, but kind of like an almondy quality to it?
I would definitely say in the live flowers, if you were to smell the live blossoms in the air, but the absolute that's made from it, totally different than the live flowers.
That I didn't actually know, so thank you so much for telling us that. And is there an ingredient in this fragrance where this fragrance is the first time you've ever used that ingredient? Like you mentioned the Cassie Absolute. Is this the first time you've ever used that in a perfume?
No, I use it in small trace amounts in other fragrances. Also, some of the bases that I make, I'll use traces of it, but this is the first time where I'm actually featuring it front and center, but presenting it in a whole different way.
And what's interesting about that leather accord, and thank you for clarifying that, is that even though it has a very strong and a very bold presence in the fragrance, I feel like I'm still able to pick out a multitude of other ingredients. So it's kind of like they share the spotlight very harmoniously. I do get a bit of like a woodsy base, and I do get the green qualities, and like you mentioned lemon and bergamot. So as soon as you said it, it clicked. And I'm like, there is kind of a zesty personality in the opening as well. So I love the fact that it allows all of these other ingredients to sort of intermingle with it without it ever becoming like arrogant or, you know, it is front and center, but it doesn't dominate the composition in a very authoritarian way.
There is cedar in that base too, if you're catching more of those woody elements. There's a bit of a little bit of storytelling, the woodiness of the cedar and that green, almost seaweedy quality to the oak moss, I thought kind of helped the story of the boat that they fled France in.
Yeah, the fact that you were able to weave a lot of these different olfactive pieces into the narrative of the perfume, I think is brilliant. Now, I've always said, and I know I mentioned this to you on the phone and in previous emails, it seems like you have, or it's quite certain that you have a cult following because you are incredibly talented and your work speaks for itself. And I remember trying your fragrances for the first time back in 2019, I want to say, and I was just immediately captivated by them. Would you have a comparison? So obviously smell-o-vision doesn't exist. If you have somebody who is an ardent fan of yours, are there any other fragrances from your line that you would compare this to, even remotely?
I mean, it does have that bit of a vintage vibe, which I tend to like to bring into my fragrances, but I really can't think of any of my other fragrances that it would compare to. Maybe Tabac Vert, slightly,
Okay.
maybe because of that woodiness in the base.
I could totally see that. But I would agree with you in saying that this is completely unique. Like you definitely went down a path that you haven't traveled before. And
Yeah.
the fact that you had that source of inspiration that resonates quite clearly through this fragrance, I think makes the storytelling aspect of it that much more beautiful.
Thanks.
Of course. So with this particular fragrance, what did you find in terms of like piecing it together? Did you encounter any challenges, or did it seem to sort of come along in a very sort of easy, free-flowing manner?
No, it was very difficult. I find the learning curve on the all natural fragrances. I just find it very difficult. If I'm doing mixed media, I mean, I can easily build accords with single aroma molecules and kind of piece the fragrance together that way. But the thing is, when you're working with the all naturals, I mean, every single one of those absolutes or essential oils is just made up of hundreds of individual chemicals. So, I mean, it's so easy just to go a little over on something and then everything collides and it just smells like mud. It's a difficult challenge. I find myself having to rethink the structure of the fragrance when I'm putting it together.
I don't know, because as I smell your fragrances, I feel like you've mastered the whole natural perfume thing as well.
Oh, thanks. No, there was a lot of late nights. I'll arrive at something that I like, and only to find, you know, a day later, I scrap it and I start over. I mean, I take notes with what I thought went right that time around and just keep trying to build on that.
So is it fair to say that there are a lot of discarded formulas?
There are, yeah.
Oh man. I'm sure fans of yours would love to try some of those fragrances if you ever revisit them in the future and you feel like, you know, they've matured nicely.
Yeah, I always do keep them aside though. You know, a lot of my little prototypes, I just keep them put away because yeah, who knows what it's going to be like, you know, down the line. I mean, what if it was good, but I just didn't like it at the time because it wasn't what I was trying to arrive at. You see, even in here, it drives my wife crazy because these things are all over the place. All the cabinets, all the closets.
I know this is having too many bottles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, well, the perfume collection's a whole other thing. Yeah.
You know, just going back to the fragrance, I think you are incredibly talented. And I think people will appreciate you taking a different direction with the composition, but also one that has that, you know, Rogue quality stamp of approval on it. It is something that I would say, oh yeah, this came out of Rogue, right? Like I can imagine this being something that you would compose because in fact you did compose it, but it's different enough that I think it's going to, you know, give people, by the way, I love the mug. Help is an amazing album.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the Beatles.
Oh yeah, it's been my favorite mug for years. I'm surprised it hasn't been broken yet, but
no, sorry, I apologize for that. Shiny red ball syndrome. I've been listening to a lot of Abbey Road lately, but Help is a beautiful album. And I definitely want to thank you again for sharing this with me. I also want to ask, would you say that there was or there is an ingredient in this fragrance that you absolutely love working with it? It's a motif in your fragrances, and it's something that is almost like kind of evident of the Rogue DNA.
Besides the oak moss, I mean, which I tend to be known for, oak moss and tree moss in my fragrances, would also be the labdanum in all the variations that it comes in. I mean, there's just something really special about it, you know, just the resinous quality. I mean, even in like the cistus essential oil, I mean, you get a lot of those top notes out of there. I don't know, it's a great ingredient. I love incorporating that in most of my fragrances.
Thank you again so much, Manny, for giving us a few moments of your time. I know how incredibly busy you are, and you have a family and you have other aspirations and other endeavors that you're pursuing. So this is a beautiful, beautiful new release, L'Homme aime Lacroix. Please give it a chance if you can. And Manny, would you mind telling us where can we purchase this fragrance if we're interested in getting our hands on it?
Yeah, at the moment, you'll be able to find it on my website and in my Etsy shop. Lucky Scent, and real soon should hopefully be Indigo Perfumery and Fragrance Vault for starters.
Oh, nice. Very good. And they're all really great folks, from Anne to Franco. They're all great people. So yes. I'm going to leave all of the links down below. And I'm also going to do my best to try to update those links or that list whenever a new retailer is brought to my attention. Please go out there if you can, support this fragrance, and support Manuel. He's doing an amazing job. So thank you again so much for everything. I really, really appreciate it. Amazing fragrance. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak about it on the channel in this Cephalabon contributor video, and you will always have our support. Best of luck with everything. And if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Oh, thanks so much, Steve.
Of course, the pleasure is all ours. Absolutely. So once again, follow the links down below. Thank you again so much for your generosity. Thank you at home for tuning in. We love you guys, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.